It's a good bounce back win for us today. I thought we started the game with the right tone on the defensive end, and so that was that was by design for us to get.
They told her to wait. They told her she wasn't ready. They built an entire narrative around why the most electrifying player in women's basketball needed to sit down, stay patient, and earn her place in line. And for a moment, just a moment, it looked like they had won. But here we are. Because the news that just dropped out of the Team USA camp has not only shattered that narrative, it has completely buried it. Caitlin Clark is not just on the roster. She is wearing number 22. And if you think that's just a jersey number, you have absolutely no idea what just happened. Let's talk about why this is so much bigger than it looks on the surface. In the world of professional basketball, numbers are not random. They are currency. They are identity. They are statements. And on a team like Team USA, where the roster is stacked with legends and decorated veterans who have spent a decade winning gold medals, jersey assignments follow a very specific and very political pecking order. Rookies take what is left. Veterans get what they want. That is the unwritten rule that has governed the locker room for years. So when the coaching staff confirmed that Caitlin Clark, a second-year player, would be walking in and taking number 22 immediately, without negotiation, without compromise, every single person inside that program understood exactly what was being said. This is her team now. Full stop. And to understand why that declaration carries so much weight, you have to go back to where this story really begins. Because the road to this moment was not clean. It was not graceful. It was messy and political and honestly kind of ugly. When the original Olympic roster was assembled without Clark's name on it, the people in charge came armed with explanations. They talked about chemistry. They talked about the physicality of international competition. They talked about experience and seniority and fitting into an established system. It all sounded reasonable on the surface. But here is the thing about reasonable-sounding excuses. Sometimes they are just the polished version of the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. And the truth, as sources close to the program have since confirmed, was far less about basketball and far more about power. The old guard wanted to send a message. They wanted to show the new face of the league that fame does not automatically buy you a seat at the table. They wanted to humble her. And for about 5 minutes, it looked like it worked. It did not work. In fact, it backfired in one of the most spectacular ways that sports history has ever recorded. Because instead of shrinking Clark's influence, the snub turned her into something even more powerful than a basketball player. It turned her into a symbol. While Team USA was in Paris winning gold in front of half-empty arenas, Caitlin Clark was back home selling out WNBA stadiums. While the national team was collecting medals that nobody seemed to care about, Clark was driving viewership numbers that the women's game had never seen in its entire history. Merchandise flying off shelves. Highlight reels dominating social media. Casual fans who had never watched a WNBA game in their lives suddenly clearing their Sunday afternoons to watch the Indiana Fever. And USA Basketball was sitting there watching all of it happen in real time, doing the math, and realizing they had made a catastrophic miscalculation. This was not just a cultural mistake. This was a financial one. And nothing gets fixed faster in professional sports than a financial mistake. So the conversation shifted. And according to sources familiar with the situation, the conversation shifted dramatically. The call to bring her in was not a polite tap on the shoulder. It was not an invitation extended from a position of power. It was closer to a negotiation, and Clark held every single chip on the table. She had the fame. She had the audience. She had the Nike deal that is reportedly one of the most lucrative in the history of women's sports. And speaking of Nike, let's not pretend for a second that the swoosh had nothing to do with this decision. When you have a corporation that has invested that kind of money into building a global brand around a single athlete and that single jersey number, it makes exactly zero business sense to put her on the world stage wearing some random number that nobody associates with her name. Number 22 is not just Caitlin Clark's preference. It is her logo. It is her identity since her days at Iowa, where she rewrote the record books and put women's college basketball on a completely different planet. And the people with the money made sure that number came with her. The business of basketball, as they say, is undefeated. But let's not pretend this transition has been smooth, because it has not been. Imagine spending 10 years of your life grinding through overseas leagues, fighting for roster spots, winning medals in arenas that barely covered their operating costs, and then watching a second-year player walk through the door and get handed the keys to the entire program. That energy is real. We have seen it play out on the court already. The hard fouls that went a little too hard. The eye rolls that cameras caught at just the wrong moment. The podcast appearances where legends of the game very carefully, very deliberately questioned whether Clark's success was being overblown. None of that disappears overnight just because everyone is wearing the same uniform. The coaching staff knows this. And the fact that they confirmed this jersey number anyway tells you everything about the conversations that have already happened behind closed doors. They have drawn the line. They have told the room which direction this program is heading. Get on board or get left behind. And honestly, the argument for getting on board is overwhelming. Because whatever anyone thought about Caitlin Clark before her rookie season, they cannot think it anymore. She led the league in assists. She shattered rookie records that people thought would stand for a generation. She took a team that was supposed to be in lottery territory and dragged them into the playoffs on pure will and basketball IQ. The "she is not ready for this level" conversation is not just dead, it has been cremated. And with the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles on the horizon, the coaching staff is not thinking about the past. They are thinking about what it takes to dominate on home soil in front of the biggest audience women's basketball has ever had. And the answer to that question has a name, and that name wears number 22. The strategic vision here is genuinely exciting if you love basketball. The plan is being rebuilt around her court vision, and that is a sentence that should terrify the rest of the world. Think about what it means to put Caitlin Clark at the point of a Team USA offense and then surround her with Aya Wilson and Breanna Stewart. Wilson, arguably the most dominant post player on the planet. Stewart, one of the most versatile forwards the international game has ever seen. And Clark feeding both of them with that vision, that passing range, that ability to stretch defenses all the way to the logo and force help rotations that open up everything else. That is not a basketball team. That is a cheat code written in human form. The veterans who are willing to become finishers in that system rather than primary ball handlers are going to look very smart very quickly. Because there is a reason this transition feels familiar to students of the game. We have been here before. When the Dream Team era shifted from Magic Johnson and Larry Bird to Michael Jordan, it was not graceful either. There were egos. There was friction. There was competitive pride butting up against the reality of where the game was going. But it was necessary. And what came out the other side was the most dominant run in basketball history. We are watching that same moment unfold right now in the women's game. Now let's address the noise that surrounded Clark before this confirmation, because it is part of the story. The hazing she endured as a #1 pick was unlike anything we have seen for an incoming superstar. The hard fouls that crossed the line. The dismissiveness from certain corners of the league. The names, and yes, Cheryl Swoops, that includes you, who went out of their way to publicly question her impact and try to reframe her achievements as somehow less real than they appeared. Those voices were loud for a while. They filled up podcasts and comment sections and talk show segments. But here is where the story turns poetic. Every single one of those people now has to watch Caitlin Clark become the face of American basketball on the world stage. Every one of them has to watch that number 22 jersey get marketed globally as the symbol of the future of the sport they spent their careers building. That is not a small thing. That is a full-circle moment that no amount of revisionist commentary can undo. The pressure on her now is immense, and anyone who tells you otherwise is not being honest. By accepting this role, she is accepting the weight of an entire program on her shoulders. If Team USA struggles, the storyline will not be kind. The same media infrastructure that spent a year celebrating her rise will pivot on a dime and make her the reason for every loss. That is the nature of being at the top. But here is what the tape tells us about Caitlin Clark under pressure. She does not shrink. She expands. The bigger the moment, the sharper the focus. She has been the focal point of every team she has ever played on, going all the way back to high school, and the pattern has been consistent. Give her the stage and she will fill it. What we are watching right now, if you zoom out far enough to see the whole picture, is genuinely historic. A player who was told to wait her turn forced the entire establishment to move on her timeline instead of theirs. She did it in 1 year. Not 4. Not 8. And now the number that defined her at Iowa, the number that is stitched into her brand and her logo and her story, will be the number she wears when she represents this country on the biggest stages in the world. Watch the body language when the cameras find the locker room. Watch who gravitates toward her and who keeps their distance. Watch who she passes to in the fourth quarter and who passes back. The jersey number is just the beginning. It is the flag planted in the ground, the declaration that the era has officially changed hands. The critics have gone quiet. The doubters are recalibrating. The coaches have made their bet. And if history has taught us anything at all, and it has taught us plenty, betting against Caitlin Clark is the worst investment you can make. The story of how she got here is remarkable. But the story of what she does next? That one is going to be legendary.